if a Ringo Starr drum set would be a standard 4-piece kit. It's a bass drum, a snare drum, a tom-tom that's mounted on the bass drum, and then what's called a floor tom, which is usually mounted on the side, either on legs or on a stand.
Okay.
So that'd be your 4-piece kit. Pretty standard.
Yep.
The next one that's the most standard is the 5-piece kit, which if you've ever seen, there's 2 tom-toms mounted on the bass drum.
Yep.
5-piece, right?
Yep.
I have one that's a 6-piece, which is just like that, except there's an extra floor tom on the side.
Okay.
When I started doing a lot of touring, you'd go, like, say, to a music festival or something, and they do what's called backlining, meaning the drummer never brings his own drum set. There's a rental company that typically supplies things like amplifiers, sound systems, drum sets, and then the individual musicians just bring, like a guitarist only has to bring their guitar and their pedals, or a drummer typically brings their sticks and maybe just personal items like, I have one right here, like a bass drum pedal, snare drum, the things that you kind of have to personalize something.
Sure.
Well, so the thing with the backlines is you almost always get either a 5-piece or a 4-piece drum set. Now, if you're a big name player, you get to request what you want. But if you're just going to a festival, there's like 10 bands that are playing on that drum set. So I always adopted the methodology or the thought process that I don't want such a customized setup that I couldn't sit down and be comfortable somewhere else on some other kit, which is ironically different from what we're going to be talking about today in customizing SolidWorks. But yeah, that was kind of the approach. So I just keep it simple. I have a 4-piece drum set over here that I do a lot of my theater work in. I have a 6-piece. My main set is a 6-piece over here, but I hardly ever play it out in that full configuration. I just try to keep it simple. And I'm not good enough to have a lot of drums.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Did you, so I know we were talking about how you played in high school. Did you also play marching band as well? Or were you just like, okay. Would you play marching band?
School band, my experience was, you had to kind of be in everything. You were in marching band in the fall, and then it was like an orchestral band the rest of the time. And I went to small school in Wyoming, so they didn't have a whole lot of, there weren't like a wind ensemble and a string ensemble. Right. It was just, you're in band.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Hey, well, first off, let me welcome some of you who are joining the chat. If you are just jumping in, Brad and I are having conversations about our musical backgrounds and specifically his drumming career. So if you're joining us, you want to join in, by all means, maybe let us know what instrument you played if you were in band. Brad, I was telling you, I was in band, and it's funny because I played saxophone, and I loved playing saxophone for like you said, the kind of the orchestral band, and then I played tenor and jazz band. Mm-hmm. I hated playing it in marching band. There was something like about having to be outside with the wind instrument. And so I convinced the band leader that I wanted to play bass drum. And so I was part of the bass drum line in marching band, and it was one of the best experiences of my whole high school career. Yeah, I loved being part of the drum line. What size were you in? Because sometimes they have like 4 or 5 bass drums in some marching bands, right? We did, yeah. So we had a 5-drum bass drum line. Goodness. And ironically, I played the smallest when I started. So 6'3" guy with this like equivalent of like a snare drum turned on its side. Wow. But then by my junior year, it was either my junior or senior year, I played the fourth one in the line. And yeah, I mean, it was so much fun. I mean, we just, drummers get the fun part of marching band, I feel like. So what did you play? Did you play snare or toms? Well, I started, let's see, when I was a freshman in high school, I was on bass drum, and then I moved up to snare the next year and did a little bit of mallet playing when it was called for, but yeah, I played snare drum the rest of the time. Awesome. Well, hey, again, I want to go ahead and let everybody know, welcome. If this is your first time in live design, we want to warmly welcome you to it. If you're a returning member, by all means, let us know in the chat. As you can see, we've been having a pretty fun conversation about all things band. I feel like oftentimes engineers and designers are members of the band sometimes. So, but I'm excited to welcome Brad Williamson to our show this morning. Welcome, Brad.
Hey everybody.
Yeah. So, Brad, tell us a little bit about what the topic is that we're gonna cover today.
Yeah. So this is just good old-fashioned tips and tricks that I know everybody likes. I think there's going to be a little something for everybody here when it comes to customizing the user interface, so you can just be more productive. And when it comes to the UI, there's a lot of personalization that you can do to make yourself feel more at home in front of the software. And really what drove this is thinking about, okay, what are those things that I just have to do whenever I sit down in front of maybe it's a new computer, or maybe I'm sitting down at a coworker's machine, or just out of my element. What is it that I have to do at a minimum to make it kind of feel my own?
That's awesome. These, like, back when we used to go to user group meetings and all of that, these were some of my favorite sessions. And so, oh yeah, I want to encourage everybody, if you have questions throughout this presentation as Brad's going through this, be sure to put them in the chat. I'll do my best to kind of convey them to Brad as we get started here. But Brad, maybe I'm kind of intrigued what you have on the screen. What are we going to kind of look at here today? Okay,
so this model. Well, okay. So first off, we're just going to talk tips and tricks for the user interface. So it's really not dependent upon any model, but I wanted to put something cool on screen that just was fun to look at, and also gives me an opportunity to showcase some of my friends or customers. So I reached out to a friend of mine in Michigan, Josh Allen. Now, Josh runs a company called Indie Drum Labs.
Okay.
So, consistent with that music and drumming theme that just why not, right? So I talked to Josh and asked him if he had any cool models he would mind sharing, just so I could have something to showcase these UI tips and tricks. And he sent me this model last week. It's really cool. What this does, let me show you an image of what this is in context. This is a TomTom mount. We talked about what the TomToms were a minute ago, but let me go over here into my 3D Experience platform and do a little search. I've got some images loaded up here that'll put a little real world context on this. Let's do a preview over here. Okay, so this is one of Josh's drum sets that he makes at his company, Indie Drum Labs. He does everything, builds the drums, builds all the hardware. And as a mechanical engineer, I really like the innovations he does on hardware. But this is the tom mount that you see here. Okay, it's mounted onto the bass drum, and this is where you attach a tom-tom. Now on his drum sets, they come standard. His hardware comes on his drum sets, but you can buy this piece, say if you're doing a restoration like of a vintage drum set where you love the drums, but the hardware, from the 50s or 60s is kind of janky, right?
Right.
So you could buy this tom mount, and it still has a vintagey looking vibe to it, but you could install that and have now really some nice heavy duty durable hardware. The other thing that's kind of cool about this is he has a no drill option.
Yeah, I noticed that. I was like, how does this thing mount?
Yeah, so this one you can mount it on a rail that you would just replace two of these lugs with a rail mount. And that way you don't even have to drill into the shell. So it's a very cool design, really modular. And, just a lot of the kind of stuff that we do every day: parts assemblies, drawings, machine design, those kind of things. So that's the model that I'm going to be showcasing today. I'm not going to really break down his design. I just wanted to give Josh a shout out and have something cool to look at on screen.
Nice. A couple other quick shout outs. Eric Beatty, welcome. Victor Leon, thank you. Todd Trout, good to see all of you guys in the chat. Again, just a quick reminder as we go through this. If you have questions or, even just, your mind gets blown by something Brad shows, please, let us know in the chat. It'll be cool for everybody to see. So let's get into it, Brad.
Yeah. All right. So here's my top 10 user interface customizations, the things that I would do. And what I've done here is I just launched SolidWorks from scratch. I wiped out my registry, so it deleted all of my settings. This is as if I was launching for the first time. So you're going to see me go through and do the customizations that I would normally do. Plus, I pulled some of my favorite or some of my my colleagues, my SolidWorks expert colleagues, many of whom you know and you've seen on live sessions, and just got a collation of some of their favorite tips and tricks too. So I'm going to be mixing in some of the best tips from the experts.
Okay.
All right, cool. So let's start with number 10. My number 10 user interface customization that I'll do right away has to do with add-ins. Now, when it comes to add-ins, these are the modules or the plugins, depending on what you're licensed for, that will come that load up by default when you launch the software. And to find the add-ins, you go up here to the gear icon. We're going to be going to this a lot, so you'll see me coming up here, and we go to the drop down and you just go to add-ins.
Okay.
So in the add-ins dialog here, this is where you get to choose what gets loaded in, both when you start up the software or what's active in your current session. So you just go ahead and configure the things that you use all the time. All right, like for me, I always use the Toolbox library, so I want that turned on at startup, and I want it in my current session.
Yep.
But other tools like CAM, okay, we're licensed for CAM. I'm not going to use that today. I'm going to turn that off. I do use Composer a lot, so I'll keep that one in. Inspection, I will not be using anytime soon, so I'm going to unload that and then free up that license for some other folks. And then I'm also going to keep my 3D Experience platform add-in turned on. I'll show you what that looks like in context in a minute. Okay, so by getting these turned on or off, I'm really setting up what additional capabilities I want loaded in or not loaded in. And it's going to do three things for me. Okay, the first thing is it's going to clean up my toolbar display. So like if I unload the inspection add-in, I won't see that tab anymore. In fact, let me close that out and you'll see that tab go away. Okay, the second thing it's going to do for you is it will minimally or marginally save on the load time and the amount of memory that's occupied in use when you launch your software, because you're not having to load as much software. Right. But really the most important thing, Steve, is if you work with a multi-users with a network license, if you have add-ins turned on that you're not using, you're probably blocking somebody out from using that tool, like simulation or like routing or inspection. So turn off the stuff you're not going to use to just kind of clean up your display and be a good SolidWorks citizen. Okay.
Yeah, I like this tip a lot. Actually, when I first started, I think one of the biggest things I would always miss was the fact that there was two columns. There was the one that you could enable what you wanted, but then there was the on startup. And I would always enable what I wanted, and then I'd start SolidWorks again. It's like, wait,
it's not there.
It's not there. Why is it? So yeah, the column of on startup, that's a good one. So
yeah. So let's put one of these add-ins to use. Okay, so I turned on my Toolbox add-in. I'm going to go over to the design library, and I've just opened up this tilter subassembly, and we're going to drop in a couple of fasteners in this. This is going to take a button head cap screw. So I'll go into my toolbox. This is going to be an ANSI metric. Let's size that down a little bit. It's a metric socket head button screw. So I'll drag and drop this in. I think it's an M6. I'm not sure. As I hover over this edge, it auto sizes for me. That's nice. Yep. Now I just have to specify the length. It's going to be a 6mm length. That's good. Check mark. It keeps that fastener active in case I want to drop in any more, and just smart mates it right into place. When I'm done, I'll hit escape. So there's a really quick use case of how I can tailor my add-ins and then put one to use right away.
Nice.
In fact, if we toggle, let's close out of this one. So I'm going to save changes. I'm not going to save changes just yet, but I'm going to keep the changes. So I want to show you real quick that 3D Experience add-in as well. And this is one that a lot of you probably haven't used or aren't familiar with yet, but did you know you can connect your SolidWorks desktop to the 3D Experience cloud for data management, for storing, managing, collaborating on your data? And that's what I've done. So
yeah, that's great. That's nice, right? Everything is where you need it, and it's saved, backed up, no servers, all that kind of good stuff.
No servers, and I get a lot of really good feedback on this. So like, for instance, I can see that all my data is saved to the cloud with these check marks. The top level assembly has changed. It needs a save.
Yep.
And in fact, that mini tilter, those parts that I added to that, which are right down here, The thing that's cool about when you connect to the 3D Experience platform with your toolbox is it automatically catalogs those silently and sets them to a released state.
Got it. Yeah, so it's integrated right out of the box.
Yeah, so there's some PLM, there's some file management going on, there's some user rights controls. So I really like that add-in too.
Gotcha. Cool.
Okay, so that's number 10. That's using add-ins.
Nice. So let's look at number 9, right? I'm a new user. Mm-hmm. What's the number 9 thing I should look at doing?
So number 9 for me, and let's take a walk back in time again. Let me go show you an image here. Once again, I'm just pulling an image out of my 3D Experience cloud. Here's an image from, I think, SolidWorks 2000. Let's go back one here. Pre-2007, let's say.
Okay. So we're going back a little ways.
Yeah. What the UI looked like pre-2007 or 2008 was all toolbar based. Remember those days?
I do. Yeah, I started on 2001 plus.
Okay. So you had on one side, you had your sketch toolbar. On the top, you had features. On the side, maybe you had assemblies, and you'd stack and stack and stack these toolbars.
Yeah.
And it was really incumbent upon people to customize then. You know, you were customizing your toolbar layout, and it made it even more difficult to sit down at an unfamiliar station because there was so much customization you had to do with these toolbars. Well, we've pretty much gotten away from toolbars, and instead we've adopted the ribbon bar concept. But there are still two toolbars that are always on screen. You just maybe never thought about it. It's the quick access toolbar, or what you might refer to as the main toolbar. That's this guy up here. And there's the heads up toolbar, this one here. So I want to show you how you might customize those. And this is a tip from Jordan Taddick. Okay, so Jordan, would tell you that the quick access toolbar up here, it's always on screen, no matter what mode you're in. Parts, assemblies, drawings, sketches. So the kind of commands that you see here are the things you would need all the time. New, open, save, rebuild, your options and customize. And likewise for the heads up toolbar, it's the view related stuff, zoom and section view and your scenery and your appearances and whatnot. So you think about, well, are there any commands that aren't on this toolbar that I find myself using all the time? And for me, there are a couple. So I'm going to show you how to do that. Once again, we'll go to the gear and we'll go down to customize.
While you're bringing this up, maybe a quick question for everybody on the chat. What year did you start using SolidWorks? What was your first release? So let's see what everybody's got to say.
That'll be good to know. It's been a long time, since '95.
Yeah,
a lot of releases there. So I'm going to add the close button. If there's open, I want close. So when you go to the customize dialog, there's this commands tab, and this is just a catalog of every single icon you could have in the software. It's a lot, right? So you don't want to wade through all that. Instead, just use this search bar and type in what you want. Close, there it is, and just drag and drop. And if there's one up here you don't want, just drag and drop it into the dialog and it'll remove it from the toolbar. Okay, so there's close. Another one Jordan would say he would use is the measure tool.
Right.
Drop that up here, maybe like so, because you would use that in a lot of contexts. It doesn't have to be just part, assembly, drawing, sketch. You could use it all the time. And then while this dialog is open, I can customize the heads up too. And this one's from Andy Barnes. Andy would say, hey, I want the normal to view icon in my heads up. Yeah. Like so. And
gosh, so these are great. I forget that you can customize those, especially the one where the save and the open. You kind of lose sight of the fact that you can customize that. So
you forget about that main toolbar up there, the quick access.
Yeah.
Let's see. Now there's a few more. I'm not going to customize the icons, but I want to show you a few things you can do with the heads up when it comes to scenery.
Okay.
So with a user group starting to come back online, you got to do a user group presentation, or 3DX World is coming back around. Maybe you've submitted for a presentation. You want to have some really top-notch graphics. So I want to show you a couple of customization tips that can really help you make next level graphics. And it's done under the scenery. Okay, so these are your scenes. you drop under here and you see that there's a bunch of different scenes. There's the default scene. There's a white background scene. There's some more like studio lighting scenes. And then there's some crazy ones here. Courtyard background.
Right.
Urban background. I will never use those. Okay. So you can go down to this manage favorites and you can just take away the ones you know you're not going to use.
Right.
And there's a whole big list of other ones that you can add in if you want.
Yeah, I ironically was just playing with this list last weekend and was absolutely shocked how long that list has grown. I was like,
yeah,
man, there's tons of them here.
Yeah, and then you can take these scenes and you can kind of one-off them. So if I like the lighting, maybe I like the environment of this one, but I want to change it up a little bit so that I can make my graphics. Well, here's how you do that. Over in the feature manager, click on the multicolored ball here, display manager.
Okay.
And then you can just change the scenery. Okay, so with the scenery, that's this one here. Scenery is composed of three things at a minimum. It's the background, it's the lighting, and it's the environment. Okay, so when we talk about the environment, that means like what kind of room is it in? Is it in an outdoor space, an indoor space? And you can see here by the reflections, it's like a photo studio maybe, right?
Right.
So you want to change all of those things. Well, what do they do in Hollywood with the background? When you want to put yourself in some exotic place that you can't really replicate in a studio, you just do a color background. Well, they call that green screening, right?
Right.
So I'm going to put a green screen background. And as for the environment, the lighting, it's okay. I'm going to leave it as it is. And I'm going to turn off my shadows. So I'm really just doing hair and makeup on my model, making it as pretty as I can make it. Let's turn off the shadows and get a nice view orientation that I like. Perspective mode. Yep, that looks good. And now I'll just screenshot this. I'm using Snagit.
Okay.
So that'll come up in my Snagit editor. Now, just a couple of quick little edits here. You could do this in Photoshop or something, but Snagit is just super easy. So let's just crop this down. And then I'll use my magic wand. And because that green is all just one big high contrast solid color, it just grabs the outline of that. I can delete it. There's a little tiny bit of green right there.
Yeah.
And then I'll do an auto trim. And now I've got, in just a few seconds, I've got a super high quality transparent image that's going to look great in my PowerPoint.
This is a great tip. I think too, especially I have to imagine a lot of our customers go into design reviews or they've got to present concepts or things that they've mocked up, and to be able to have that, in PowerPoint, just butt that image right up against your text without having to block it or anything else. This is a great tip. Yeah,
it's so easy to do, and you want to make your model. You want to make it look the best that it possibly can in your presentation. So just take that little extra step there, because it's an easy customization to build a little green screen scene like that and make up your presentation graphics for your next user group or 3DX World, what have you.
Yeah. So Brad, we had a question come in, I think just a kind of a curiosity related to what are some of the specs that you're running on your computer? What's some of the hardware specs?
This is just a run-of-the-mill Lenovo P51 laptop. I think I have an NVIDIA 2000 graphics card, kind of middle of the road.
Sure.
Yeah, it's about 3 years old. So
got it.
Pretty standard PC. Yeah.
Perfect. Thanks. So keep adding those questions, guys, if you have them. And a big shout out to everybody. We have a whole varying range of different years of SolidWorks users. Scott High, 97 plus.
Hey, Scott.
I think you might be the winner right now, Scott. So, but anyway.
Yeah. So that was my number 8, toolbars.
Okay.
Now we move up into 2008 and then on. If you started using SolidWorks after 2008, then this command manager interface that you see here, that's all you've probably ever known. And this is what we adopted, I think, back when Microsoft went to this convention, like with, Office programs, and just about every software these days uses this ribbon style. And what's nice about it is it's context sensitive. So if I'm in assembly mode, I have assembly tools. If I'm in a part mode, I have part tools and so on. And instead of just a bunch of toolbars, you have these tabs.
Okay.
So you can do a couple of customizations to the command manager. One is that you can remove tabs you don't need. Like if I don't want to see MBD, I'll just right click, go to tabs, and just uncheck the ones that I'm probably not going to use, or add ones that I am going to use. Yep. So for instance, if I'm working on just a part, see how the tab layout's a little bit different here. I can remove my MBD dimensions, remove my MBD, and maybe I'm going to be working on some sheet metal for a time. So I'll go ahead and turn on that tab.
Got it. Okay.
Now you can customize the tabs, but you can also customize the commands that appear on the tabs. So, why not take a minute to clean this up a little bit? Like for me, I never use this wrap tool. Can I just get rid of it? Well, sure. Just right click here and go to customize. And it's the same customize dialog we've been using all along. And I'll go to my commands catalog here and just drag it off the screen. As long as this dialog is open, it's kind of like a wastebasket.
Yeah, it's so simple. And I think it makes a huge difference. I mean, I remember when I would go through essentials with customers, we spent a lot of time because most of us live in our CAD tool, right? Mm-hmm. And so making these little tweaks to make sure it's efficient and uncluttered, it makes a big difference day to day.
And you really only have to do it once.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm going to add the combine tool. That's a feature that I use a lot, but it's not in the command manager. So I can drop it anywhere I want. If I drop it with a vertical insertion point, it comes in with a big icon. If I drop it over here in more of this condensed view here, it comes in this stacked view. All right, so you can just put it wherever you want. Now you can put the same command in multiple locations in multiple tabs. So if you want quick access to the same tool in a lot of different locations, that's not a problem. And while we're still on this command manager, I'm going to pop over to the toolbars tab here in the customize dialog. And you notice the way I'm set up here is with icons plus text. Now, if you're a superpower user and you don't need to see the text, you can turn that off. And now it's got really compact view. Get a little bit more screen space back,
Yep.
However, if you're on a 4K, that's going to be microscopic. So you probably want to go over here and jump up the icon size a little bit, and you can experiment with that. Now you will have to restart your session for that to take effect.
Okay.
Just be aware of that. The thing that's cool here, though, is the icon size. This is unique to the SolidWorks application. So you don't have to go mess with your Windows settings to adjust the display in SolidWorks.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. You don't have to mess with that 125% or whatever that Windows sets it at by default. Yeah.
Yeah. So there you go. Some nice customizations to the command manager. That's, for me, I think that's my number 8.
Okay.
So number 7 comes to us from my buddy Todd Train. He's an old school guy too, probably goes back to predates Windows. Yeah. But one of Todd's tips that he gave me is customizing the pull down menus. Okay, so pull down menus, this is probably one of the first Windows elements, wouldn't you say? Like file, edit, and all those.
Yeah. So
they're still there in SolidWorks. It's just that we don't rely on them as much, and we've kind of hidden them away. In fact, to get them to appear by default, you have to go up to the upper left corner and hover on the SolidWorks icon, and then they show up.
Right.
So if you want to keep them, you just hit the thumbtack, and now they'll stay persistent. So the menus, they're still relevant. For me, there's a couple things that I only do through menus. I don't know why. It's just the way that I've worked over the years. Under the File menu, Pack and Go, it's the only way I ever access that tool.
Yep.
The same with Find References. I use that command a lot, and the only way I ever get it is through the menus, just kind of out of habit.
Yep.
But you go under here, like under the Tools menu, and look at this. This is ridiculous. How there's so many options under here that it's almost like scary to use.
Right.
So you can.
Although I will say, ironically, for me, the Tools options, this is how I always get to it. Yeah, I don't know why, because that menu has gotten so long, but it's just like muscle memory.
Right. So tools options, right? So the thing you can do, and this is what Todd suggests, is you can thin these things out. If you go down here to the bottom where it says customize menu, now these all turn into checkboxes. Yeah. And you can just thin them out. Okay. So yeah, I use Toolbox, but I never get it through the menus. I've never once exported to AEC. And let's see, what else don't I don't use my add-ins or tools options through the menu. I do it through the gear. So I can thin that out. And now little more manageable menu.
Gotcha.
So we've got our pull down menus, but the one that you probably use more than the pull downs are the right click menus. Right click. Okay. Now for me, there's always this double arrow. This is the default behavior. If the menu extends past a certain length, they put this continuation arrow. I think it's a Microsoft thing.
Mm-hmm.
So you click here and it shows the remaining commands. Never fails. The command I want is always under the double arrow. So how do you can I just show that all the time in its full length? Yes. So here's how you do it. Go to the gear again, customize, go to this far right tab for customization and just hit show all. And that will stay sticky.
Okay.
Now your right mouse menus will always be full length.
Ah, nice.
Mm-hmm. So
perfect.
Nice little tip from Todd Train there. That's our number 7 for menu customization.
Number 7. All right. So if you've just joined us, just to recap, Brad is walking us through some must-have customizations for your interface. If you're a new user, and hopefully if you're a longtime user, you're picking up a few things too. Lots of great feedback about the green screen tip, Brad. People are really liking that one.
Good. Yeah. Let's not make bad graphics anymore.
Yeah.
Pro graphics. Yeah. Okay, so for my next one, my number 6 is called context toolbars. So context toolbars, and I'm tiling my windows here because I want you to see different contexts, part versus assembly, and so on. And also, here's a little pro tip. I've hidden the feature manager for these. That's F9. That's just a built-in shortcut for that.
Okay.
So if you're working in a tiled view, get yourself back a little space if you hide the feature manager. So the context menus, everybody's seen them. You just maybe not know what they're called. If I pick on a face here in this part, I get this little pop-up toolbar. Some people call it the pop-up toolbar. I've heard it called the mini bar. The official name is context toolbar. And it's because it's a toolbar that is specific to a context. Not only the modeling context, part, assembly, but the selection context. So this is what you get when you pick on a face in a part mode. What happens if I pick on an edge? It's different because there's different commands that are relevant only for that selection.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. If I right click just out in the graphics area, I get a context toolbar above the right menu. And this is just all view related stuff like lasso select. And there's some cool stuff in here. So go in and explore this. Lasso select, there's this magnifying glass. This is awesome. So some really nice tools there that you get context sensitive. And in assembly mode, same deal. You pick on a face, you get some assembly related tools. Now this also extends to when the feature manager is open. If I pick on a component, I get a different context toolbar than if I pick on, say, a feature within a part.
Right.
Okay, so that's what the context toolbars is. This is how you customize it. Like you'd expect. Right click while the toolbar is open and just go to customize. And it takes me to the commands tab where I can then just search for the command I want to add here. So if there's features that you happen to be using a lot that you want quick access to, just type them in and drag them onto that toolbar. For me, there's one I use a lot, delete face. Okay, there it is. And I can drag and drop that in.
Got it. Okay, nice.
So you would do that for parts, assemblies, drawings, just the 4 different contexts.
Now, Brad, I guess I haven't tested this in a while, but does it honor the intelligence? Like if you throw a command on that's not necessarily going to be able to be utilized, does it gray it out?
Yeah, it'll gray it out.
Okay.
Just like it would in any other toolbar. If that command's not available, it just won't work. But there's not enough intelligence to stop you from putting
it on
a tool on. Yeah.
Okay.
So we can customize those context toolbars for our part mode, our assembly mode, and so on. Like in assemblies, for instance, when cool thing about Josh's hardware design, it's super modular. It's really adjustable. I can adjust the angle of this arm. I can adjust the tilt over here. I can adjust the up and down and swivel of this. But when I try to drag on that, there's so much range of motion that it's hard to isolate.
Right.
So there's actually an assembly tool I can use for that, and I'm going to put it on my context toolbar. I'll go to customize, and it's called temporary fix. We added this in 2015, I want to say. Correct me if I'm wrong in the chat. Let's put that on my context-sensitive assembly toolbar. So now when I pick on a face, I get my temporary fix. And here you can just go say, what component do you want to like ground temporarily? I want to pick on this little housing. And I'll say fix that group. And now it'll isolate the movement. So an assembly that's a little bit wonky or unwieldy because it has so many degrees of freedom, it now just kind of holds it down for you.
That's a great little bonus tip, highlighting the customization. But yeah, I think a lot of people forget that you can really kind of control how that movement happens right on the fly and not have it be so unwieldy.
Yeah. So I encourage you to take some of those forgotten commands like that, wow, I could use that. You know, you don't want to forget that some of that stuff is there. So put it in an area that you can get quick access to it. Got it.
Yeah. Nice. So are we heading into number 6 or number 5 here, Brad?
That was 6, context toolbar. So I think we've got 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 to go. The stakes are getting high.
Nice. Hey, maybe we should start asking for some audience favorite tips that they would throw out there. I'm sure you've obviously got 5 more to go, but it'd be neat to hear some tip favorites that you found in your own day-to-day use that you really can't live without. Put them in the comments. It'd be fun to hear.
Yeah, for sure. So number 5 for me has to do with customizing the display of the feature manager tree. We spend a lot of time in this feature manager. So I want to show you a couple of things that'll kind of supercharge your ability to work in here. So if you take, here we're in just a part. This is the wing bolt that you would use to tighten down things on that tom mount. If you look in the feature tree, the first thing I notice at the top, there's a lot of text. Okay, I've got the name of the part, the name of the configuration, the name of the display state. That's a lot. Can I just clean that up a little bit? Yes. And if you just right click and go to tree display, there's an option we added a few years ago that says do not show all that stuff if there's only one of them, which is a lot of the stuff we design, right? We make a part, we have one configuration, we have one display state. It's probably more often than not that case.
Yeah.
You can just hit that toggle and look how much it just cleaned up my display. In fact, I can even shrink down the width now without cutting anything out.
Gosh, yeah, that's so helpful.
Yes. Now that's per component. That's not a global setting. So, you know, if I toggle back to my assembly, I'm going to have to make that setting too if I want it there.
Okay.
But another one that I like to see, especially when I'm modeling, is I like to know what my parent-child relationships are. Can I delete this cutout without affecting anything? I don't know. So if you right-click at the top of the tree on the component name, there's 2 icons we added here. 15, 16, somewhere like that.
Yep.
Dynamic reference arrows, both for parent and or child. So you can do them one at a time or both. I'll just do the parents. So when I click on a feature, it shows you where the reference arrows, the references are for that feature. Okay, this is useful in case I want to reorder a feature. Where's the highest I can go in the tree? Well, it's directly below the lowest parent, which would be in between this revolve and sweep. That's the highest I could reorder that. Then you also want to know about what about child features. If I delete this cut extrude, does it impact anything? Nope, no children, no children, no children. But you go up higher in the tree and you go, all right, I can't really do anything with that cut revolve without affecting that fillet and that cut. And then look at this one, the base revolve, pretty much everything's
built on it. Yeah,
it's built on it. Okay, so it's good to be able to get that feedback. And that's one of those you can just either turn them on as needed, or you can turn it on and leave it as a default. But again, it's component by component.
Gotcha.
Okay, one last little thing I'll show you about this tree display. And I'm going to toggle, oh, I just hit one by mistake, but this is a cool one. Show flat tree view. Check out what it did here in the feature tree. Is it just exploded all the sketches? Whoops, wrong tool. Here we go. It took all the sketches and it didn't really dissolve them. It just shows
it just unnests them, right?
It unnests them. That's a great way to say that. Yeah, so it's just a straight serial hierarchy of how those features were created. So that's kind of neat.
Yeah.
But let's go back over to this assembly. And if I dive down into, I think it's this SubAssembly right here. me navigate up to that one. So this one has several duplicate components. Got a couple memory locks, got a couple T-rods. If you have a big assembly with lots of instances of the same parts, it adds a lot of length to the feature tree. So check this out. I can go to my tree display and group component instances. Badoop.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah. So it's not a subassembly.
Right.
And it's not a folder per se, but it's kind of like both of those. Hasn't changed anything about the mate hierarchy or anything. It's just a way of compacting.
Yeah. Doesn't affect the bill of material. It's purely just a visual way of organizing the data in the feature tree.
Yep. Just a way of compacting the display. Perfect.
Got it.
Yeah. So that's my customizations that I'll do to the feature manager tree. Most of those are by component, like you'd want it to be.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So number 4, this one's from Too Tall Toby. and it's from me too, because a lot of these are settings that I would make too, but it has to do with our old buddy tools options.
Okay.
So let's look at tools options, which is the gear icon, Steve. You do not have to go through the menus to get that.
I know. It's muscle memory, Brad.
Yeah. Now, this, oh boy, if you're just new to SolidWorks and you take a look at this tools options, it could be a little bit intimidating because there are many categories of options. And on each category, there's dozens of settings. What do they all do? Well, the good news is you don't have to mess with most of them.
Mm-hmm.
CAD admins might come in and make some global settings, like for instance, to the file locations where you get your BOM templates, where you get your sheet formats, where your libraries are located. But for the most part, users don't have to do a lot with this. There's a few settings that you can adjust just as a matter of preference, and I'll walk you through a couple of those. The other thing to be aware of here is that there's 2 kinds of settings here. There's your system options.
Yeah.
And then there's your document properties. Okay, so just like it implies, system options are global, system-wide. If I change it once, now and forever, it's going to be that setting until I change it.
On all document types.
On
right?
all documents going forward.
Doesn't matter type.
Yeah, yeah. Document properties like units, number of decimal places, drafting standard. Those are all document specific.
Got it.
Okay, so if you ever you make your first part in SolidWorks, you go in and change the units to inches, and then you go make your second part in millimeters again. You go, why? I just changed it. You changed a document property.
Yep.
So Too Tall Toby, pretty old school, right? He likes when you expand out and look at the icons over here in, like, say, underneath this part. You see all the feature icons. They're the blue that we changed to, I think, in 2017. Right.
Yeah.
So Too Tall Toby, being an old school guy, would say, man, I want my classic icon colors back, but I don't know where it is. If you just type up in the search keywords, it'll take you to any options that have that keyword, and you can click on it and it goes right to the page. I don't have to remember where it's at. Okay, so here we go. Icon color classic.
Yep.
And it changes right away. There we go. There's my nice green and yellow classic icons in all the content, in all the toolbars, in all the feature icons, etc. Now there's a few other settings I want to make, just about 2 or 3, but I'm going to demonstrate a little bit of an assembly design workflow to just show you the difference of how adjusting a couple of settings can make it just a much smoother experience for me. Okay.
Okay.
So the goal here is I want to take the mounting plate down here and cut out 4 little square holes on each corner, but I want to do it in the context of the assembly. So let me show you first off what the workflow looks like just completely out of the box.
Okay.
I'll pick on this face. Now what I don't know is, did I pick on a face? Did I pick on a part? Did I pick on a subassembly? I'm not sure. So I'll use my breadcrumbs up here.
Yep.
I've
been noticing you've been using those.
Yeah, the breadcrumbs help you be explicit about what you want to select. Okay, so right now it thinks I've picked a face. What I really want is the part. So I can pick here on the part and say edit part, and I go into edit part mode. That just saved me from having to look through the feature manager tree and find it.
Right.
So it's like a mini isolated version of the feature manager. So I'll go into edit part mode and watch the visual feedback on screen. Watch what happens. Okay. Yep. You like it? I don't like it.
Never been my favorite.
Yeah, so the default behavior is to make all the parts you're not editing to be this transparent wireframe. And I get it. They're trying to make it obvious to you that you're editing the one part and not editing the others, but you can still reference them. It's okay. To me, it's just kind of a clumsy way of displaying. So I'm going to adjust a couple of settings that are going to make that a little bit easier to see. And then when I get in to make the cutout, is going to make it even more obvious. So let's back out of this edit mode. Let's go back to our tools options, and I'll make a couple of settings. First one has to do with getting an opaque display. It's actually it's in display. Assembly transparency for in context edit. If I typed in transparency, I would have got it. I'm going to set it to opaque.
Got it.
That's going to leave everything a solid color.
Yep.
Okay. One more that I want to do down here with those breadcrumbs. Thank you, Mike Sandy, for this tip. You can show the breadcrumbs at your mouse pointer instead of having to move up to the corner. You'll see that one in just a second.
Yep.
In the sketch mode, there's a setting that will enable on-screen numeric input on entity creation, meaning when I sketch a circle, why can't I just put the diameter in there?
That's one of my favorite options.
Yep. That's not on by default. So turn that one on. It'll save you bunches of steps because you do that all the time. And the last thing we'll do is go into the colors settings here. So because I'm now leaving that opaque mode, I need to say, hey, when I'm editing a part in assembly, change the color. Change the color of the edited part. Okay, it's blue by default, but you know what? I might use blue for I might have a blue part in my assembly, so I don't want to get confused. So I'm going to make sure I use a color like this salmon color. This is what we used back in the old days, like 96. You know, this is what you got when you edited a part in assembly. So I'm going to say make sure that it changes to that color. And if you really want to go crazy like Toby would, you'd say also change the non-edit parts to some color that will be like really obvious, like this pukey. I would never use that color, right? So now watch what happens when I do that same little workflow. Now when I pick on this face, boom, there's my breadcrumb right there.
Right.
Pick the part that I want to edit, go into edit part mode. Here's the part being edited. Here's the parts not being edited. It's super obvious.
That's just about the ugliest thing I've ever seen, Brad, but it's spot on. At least I know what I'm doing.
Yep, exactly. I'm going to turn on sketches temporarily because I have some sketch geometry that I want to use here. So I'll just go in and create a sketch from my context toolbar. And now I'll S key for my center rectangle. And now when I draw this, it's waiting for me to type in the numbers. All I have to do is key in the number and hit tab.
Right. That's awesome. We've had a lot of fun comments. Eric was cautioning, about the icon colors, to not to you may trigger some reactions with that. But yeah, I love the search inside of the options. I helped out at World last year in the partner pavilion where you could fire up, 2 years ago, I guess now, where you could fire up SolidWorks 95 and you could fire up some of these old versions. And I pulled up the tools options and it was like one screen with about 8 options. And that was the whole thing.
Yeah. Luckily for those of us that have been around a long time, we don't have to learn it all at once. We learned a little bit at a time as the software got more complicated. But yeah, if you're coming in new to it, boy, you're going to have that search.
Yep. Okay,
so we made our cutout, but the visual reminder is that, hey, you're still in assembly mode. Okay, so here's a little tip to get back to your breadcrumbs. Just hit the letter D and it brings them right to your cursor and I can OK out of that. Okay, so the letter D by default on your keyboard just pops you right back out. Yep, that's a default one. Good one. Okay. Yeah. So there's how you can go in and customize some of those tools options settings. Again, don't be intimidated by that big dialogue because there's really only a handful that you would ever do. If you're a CAD admin, you're probably going to have a little more ownership over that because you want to enforce some company standards, right? Everybody should have some of the same settings. Yeah. But for matters of preference, there's really only a few of them that you would need to adjust. But hopefully you saw from that little workflow how just that a little minor adjustment made that a much smoother and more visually, I got a lot more visual clues out of what was going on.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I think those are really great points to make, because I think too, the thing I've always appreciated about SolidWorks is like usually there's an option that I can set something to default if it bothers me, or the colors aren't right, or there's something not where I want it. It's there. And with that search, it makes it even easier to kind of discover where that option is, or where that thing is that I want to tweak.
Totally. All right. So that gets us to the top 3, getting really serious now.
All right.
Number 3,
stretch.
Can't live without my keyboard shortcuts.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm with you.
That said, there's a ton of keyboard shortcuts that you get for free. They just come out of the box. And I want to take a minute to acknowledge that. So let's go back to our customize under the gear and go to this keyboard tab. And if you just spend a second combing through this, you can see all the different commands that are available through the menus, all the shortcuts that are assigned. Like, did you know that Alt Spacebar would take a snapshot of your screen? Huh.
I did not.
Okay. Yeah, so there's a bunch of them here, and you can copy that list to a CSV file if you want to make like an Excel file of it.
Yeah.
That'd be handy, you know, to pass out to users in your company for like getting everybody up to speed on some company standards. You can print the list. Okay, nice. But what I really care about is some custom keyboard shortcuts. What are the commands that I need a shortcut for? Well, I got to thank my buddy Mike Sobocek for a couple of these tips. Zoom window. That's one that you use a lot. It's available in a few different spots, but I want that at my fingertips at all times. So let me show you how to do that. We're going to type in the search here to find the zoom window command. Zoom to area, I guess it's called. Okay, it's this one. Now, what do you want to assign that to? It can be a letter. It can be an F key on your keyboard. It could be a keystroke combination, like a modifier, Alt, Shift, Control, Alt, Shift, and so on.
Yep.
What do you want to put it at? How about Control A?
Let's do it.
Except Control A is already used. Right. Select all. Right. I mean, that's kind of a Windows default, isn't it? Control A. So can't use Control A, or I could override that, but I don't want to. So I'll say no to that. How about let's make it Shift A. All right, so Shift A is now my zoom to area. Another one that I do a lot is close. You know, I put a close button up there on the quick access, but I like close all. Just close everything. So let's do that one. Close all. Here it is. I did Shift A for the other one. Let's do Alt A. That. By the way, do you think there's a difference between A, Shift A, Caps Lock Shift A?
I don't know. I'm guessing there is.
Yeah, so it's case sensitive, but it's not case sensitive with the caps lock key, meaning A is a different shortcut versus Shift A. But if you have the caps lock key on, A is A.
Yeah, okay.
Make sense?
Yep.
So we're going to do Alt A for the window, zoom window. There's a couple view commands. Like you saw me turn on the sketch visibility so I could reference that sketch. I do that a lot. So I'm going to type in view sketches here. View sketches. I use K for that. This is one of those I cannot live without. Letter K.
Yeah.
And likewise for temporary axes, because a lot of times I'm needing to align something to an axis. So I'll do an Alt T. Used to be able to do T, but we made a default shortcut for T in 2018. Select over area. So now I have to do Alt T.
Gotcha.
Okay, so let's try out our keyboard shortcuts. Here's Mike's zoom window, zoom to area, Shift A. Zip, works perfectly.
Yeah.
And then I can just go up to the heads up, previous view. In fact, previous view, that'd be a nice one. Previous view is already assigned Control Shift Z. I don't like Control Shift Z. Can I make it something else? Sure. Let's go back to customize. Keyboard. What was it? Previous? PRE? Previous view. So check this out. I can make another shortcut to it, letter P, and it doesn't wipe out the first one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So there we go. Let's test this out now. Shift A, zoink, letter P, previous, letter P again, previous. Yeah, that's great.
Nice. Nice.
And then as far as those other ones I made for temporary axes and sketches, this is also kind of cool. If you go into the eyeball here, it will tooltip your custom shortcuts.
Yeah, because I used to go through and set all these, and then I would forget them. Mm-hmm. I'd make decisions about it, like, yeah, I'll remember that, and then I would never remember it.
So now I can either hit it through the heads-up toolbar, or I can keyboard shortcut it for my K, my T, or my Alt-T.
Yeah.
In 2022, we get a new default keyboard shortcut, Q for planes.
Q, yeah,
yep.
It's a great one.
Okay.
And you can override those defaults though, right? I think we talked about this, but you know, like for me, I was a little bit more cavalier in it, so I would override the S key and assign that the pop-up toolbar to something else, because that's how I would get in and out of sketches. The D for me was always dimension. You know, I wanted those two things to, you know, always be right at my fingertips. But so you can definitely override them, but I think just make a little note of what they were, because those are super beneficial shortcut keys in and of themselves to get to the toolbar and whatnot.
Totally. Well, hey, we get it's looking like what, 5-6 minutes left before we're at the hour, and we've got 2 left to go.
I think we're right on time.
Yeah, so I'm prepared for there to be some healthy debate about what I picked for number 2, number 1. You know, it's John Elway versus Joe Montana. How could you not pick John Elway, really? But there's room for some debate, I guess. So my number 2 is the S key.
Okay.
What? How could it be? S key. It's like my favorite feature. It's like the, you know, poll most SolidWorks power users. The S key shortcut toolbar is everybody's favorite. You can customize it. It's probably why it's one of your favorites. Is because it's so handy. So let's go through a little customization of the S key. We already saw the context toolbar. So how's S key different? Well, the context toolbars depend on what I pick. So I have to pick on a face, an edge, something like that. And it's stuff that's context sensitive. The S key is just your custom palette for anything you want. It's much more customizable than the context toolbars. But you do it the same way. You right click, customize. So what are some of those assembly level commands you always want at your fingertips, regardless of where you pick? You just want to hit S and get those commands. Well, you know, maybe it's mass properties. So I'll drop that on here. Maybe it's move with triad.
Right, because these are specific to the S key becomes specific to the environment that you're in.
Yes.
Yeah.
Maybe it's I forget, they changed the name of that one. Let's see. Let's do another one. Let's do that. What was the temporary fix group? Yeah, put that on my S key. Let's do preview mode, where you can split out and isolate a component. That one's pretty handy. Okay. Now the thing about this one that's different from the context toolbars is you can change where the commands go. You don't get to do that on the context toolbars, and you can change the layout. So I can make it like horizontal, vertical, stacked.
Right.
It's super customizable, and even though I'm in assembly right now, I can go customize my part toolbar without having to go be in a part.
Yeah, I loved when they added this, because it no longer required you to actually get into a sketch in order to customize the sketch icons. It was great.
Yep. So let's go back to the part mode real quick. And here's my S key. So it tracked right along with me. You know, there's my delete face. And so maybe Josh, the next time around, is instead of doing this indie logo as part of the casting, maybe he's going to laser engrave it. So let's do from the S key. Let's go into delete face, and I'll pick a face, and then I'll use the selection helper here to just grab all these surrounding faces. Makes this really fast. And I'm just going to delete and patch.
Right.
So quick application of the S key, then how you can customize that on out. So that's my number 2. I think a lot of people would probably argue that that's their favorite.
I'm holding back, Brad, because I would have put it probably would have been number 1, but I'm really curious what your number 1 is. So I'm withholding my emotional response at this point.
Okay, so I had to think about it, but why I picked the number 1, And for me, it's mouse gestures.
Okay.
I picked it because it's the one that I use the most, and it's the one that if I don't have it, I feel like I'm the most like hamstrung by. Okay.
All right.
So that's why I chose mouse gestures. And I imagine there's a few that have never really gotten the hang of mouse gestures. And what they are, if you just hold down the right mouse button and then just drag a little bit, you'll get this gesture wheel. So it takes a little bit of coordination to get the feel for how it works. By default, it just has these little flick gestures that you can do it's programmed with your default views. Yeah. Okay, that's how it comes out of the box. But I want to show you how to customize this out and really just supercharge your UI. So we'll go back to customize. Under mouse gestures, this could not be easier to figure out. Here's the guide for all the mouse gestures that are assigned for the 4 different modes: part, assembly, drawing, sketch.
Okay.
You can change the layout. Here's what Jordan would say: if you want to learn mouse gestures, just go to a 2-up layout and it puts your OK and your cancel, probably 2 of the most common things that you would do.
Yeah.
Just get in the habit of doing that. Flick to the right, flick to the left. You can go with 3 gestures, 4, you can get 12. That's getting a little carried away in my opinion, but I really like 8. I think that's a good mix of the number of commands you can put on here plus being able to execute it, right? Being able to get in that little diagonal there. So let me show you how I would put a few of my favorite commands on the mouse gestures. There's a rotate mode that I like called rotate about scene floor. Let me drag that over here. And, you know, I would use that in part and assembly mode. So rather than have to drag it, go back and drag it into 2 places, you can just control drag and drop.
Oh, nice.
Here. Do you know that? I bet a lot of folks didn't know that one.
I didn't know that. No, that's great.
I discovered that one.
That's because I'm an S key guy, Brad.
So some of these things, like you can see here, my trimetric view, my zoom to area, I want those in the same spot in both parts and assemblies, because I kind of do the same things in those modes.
Yep.
But in part mode, maybe there's a favorite feature of yours. For me, it's Whole Wizard. I want to be able to have my Whole Wizard quick access to that. So I'll put that over here. And then when I get to my assembly tools, I want like my temporary fix. And you're seeing like some of the same commands that I have in different places. I want to be able to access them different ways. And that preview isolate mode, let's put that over here. So you just customize these out the way that you want, and then it becomes a simple matter of gesturing to the right for my rotate about scene floor. So this is with rotate about scene floor turned off. So it's rotating just about the model centroid. But then when you have models that are kind of like on a turntable, this is where this looks really nice.
Right.
Yeah.
Nice.
Okay, nice. So I use that one a lot. I can flick over and get my Whole Wizard tool, and I didn't have to S key. I didn't have to hunt through a menu. It's just in the moment that felt like the quickest way to execute that tool.
Yeah. The one other thing I'll add to that I actually do really like about not only mouse gestures, but I think this works for the S key too, is I think sometimes people forget that it's not just the CAD commands that can be added to those. So like if you're a simulation person, you can add the sim commands to those. If you're, when it comes to PDM, the PDM commands can exist and be added. Yeah. So you can, you can actually do a lot with those. That's quite handy.
Yeah, in fact, if you want a little power up here, go back to your mouse gesture customization, drop down this category and go down to others. This is almost like Easter eggs. Here's some other special commands like shortcut bar. So you can actually take your S key shortcut bar and put it on a mouse gesture.
Yeah, shout out to John in the comments. He actually posted that as his favorite. So
there you go.
He shared that a little bit ago, which I thought was awesome.
So there we go. There's my top 10. Now I want to give one last bonus. The last time we'll go back to this gear menu, because once you've got everything set up the way you want to be able to save those out. So drop this down one last time. Go to Save Restore Settings. This launches the Copy Settings wizard, which can be actually launched as a standalone app. But this will let you save out your settings to a file, put it on your network, put it on a flash drive, whatever. lock it away for safekeeping.
Yep.
Now you can take that file, you can set it up on a new computer, you can distribute it to your friends, you can save it for when you get a new machine or work in a different environment.
Yep.
And you just go back and hit restore. Okay, so that's how you capture all this customization that you've done.
It's perfect. Yeah, it's such a great tip because, I mean, most of us are going to invest a little bit of time in doing this, and we definitely don't want to have to go through it again if, you know, heaven forbid, we have to do a reinstall or you know, we get a new machine. So
exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
So there's my top 10. I hope that there's some not too much disagreement there, but most of all, I hope there's something that you found there that you're going to go out and try, and that makes you just maybe a little bit more productive or gives you a little bit more enjoyment using the software. And last thing I would say, Steve, I'll kick it back to you, but thanks again, Josh Allen, for lending me your indie hardware, and thanks for making great products with SolidWorks. Yeah,
and thank you to everyone who joined, contributed in the comments, and a big shout out to you, Brad, for all the time you put into this. Because, like I said, I think these are sometimes the things that we end up appreciating most, even if we, you know, have been using since '97. Mm-hmm. There's those little things that sometimes it's good to get outside of our muscle memory and try new things in order to be more efficient. So big thank you, Brad, to you for putting this together.
Pleasure. Thanks.
Quick reminder to everyone, if you enjoyed this, if you appreciated it, like it, be sure to subscribe and turn on the notifications. That way you'll get notified when when we're having these types of events. And speaking of which, October 14th, we're going to be digging into the 3D experience and simulation. So you'll want to be sure to join us for that. And then October 21st, we're going to have Omar Zoni on talking about parametric design. So if you're a simulation user or you're just purely curious about simulation, you'll want to make sure you join those two. Both of them are going to be absolutely fantastic. And outside of that, have a great day. Go use a few shortcut tips, and we'll see you guys next time.